We are starting again with the last session of this today's event, and I give the word to my colleague Jean-Sébastien. And thank you.
All right. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for staying for this last session of the today event organized with the series of projects that you have seen. Yesterday, we have learned about innovative energy efficiency services. Then we discussed about regional energy planning and energy efficiency first, as well as space cooling policy. This morning was about energy poverty. And we finish with a session about national energy efficiency policies. That's mostly about the project ENSMOV Plus that I had the pleasure to coordinate over these 3 years. And I will start by thanking all the partners that have made a great job during these 3 years. You will hear about half of them, I think, during this session presenting. And at some point, I will also ask the others to, before the coffee break, that you raise your hand so that everybody can identify you if you want to speak to the partners during the coffee break. So there will be 2 parts this afternoon. The first part is dedicated to the results from the project, so you will hear what we have achieved. And then the second part will be a panel, and we will hear about the views from the stakeholders about how they see the future of the energy efficiency framework. As you know that there are quite many public consultations ongoing, and there might be even more proposals next year prepared by the Commission. So that's a good time also to reflect now that we are about midterm to 2030, the 10-year period from 2021 to 2030, to hear where we stand. That's what we will present to you from ENSMOV Plus, and then where we go. And that will be the panel discussion after the coffee break. But before that, I have the pleasure to welcome to the stage our project officer, Imke Lübbecke, from CINEA, because if all these projects that you have seen during these 2 days exist, it's thanks to your agency. So we are very pleased that you are here.
Thanks, Jean-Sébastien. Pleasure to be here. And I'm very much looking forward to listen to the project's results. But yeah, Jean-Sébastien asked me to provide you with a couple of opening words. I don't want to bore you because I think my colleagues have been here, so Eleftherios, Nikolaos, so I don't want to repeat. I do a speedy run through a couple of points so everyone has heard them. And yeah, just to set the scene of the interesting work of the project. So basically, you are all aware probably that the energy efficiency is really a strategic imperative of the European Commission action up to 2030, and actually now, and Commissioner Dan Jørgensen just emphasized that when pledging the basically action points for energy efficiency up to 2030. Among those are, for example, the simplification of the Energy Efficiency Directive, but also the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, and also to support actions to mainstream energy efficiency and all the provisions in the Energy Efficiency Directive to make sure that this energy efficiency is considered at all levels. As said, as a strategic imperative, value is seen to get together to gain any efficiency efforts at any level. So to create a tradable energy efficiency market, for example, with white certificates, and research and innovation, you've heard that, is also at the forefront of the Commission's efforts to boost energy efficiency. So, and this is to boost not only to cut emissions, it's really an agenda for competitiveness, an agenda for reducing consumer bills and contributing to secure Europe's continuous energy supply. So, and I'm here presenting SINEA, and the link between this program and SINEA is actually that SINEA offers a clean energy transition life funding program, which aims to support those policy efforts. And Jean-Sebastian asked me to just run you quickly through these, this program and to present what actually is the purpose. So maybe very briefly, SINEA is an organization which and you see LIFE is only one part of the agency, and LIFE has also 3 other sub-programs. So I will focus on the clean energy transition, which is of interest here. And this program actually is the key program of DG Energy to support the policy implementation. As you all know, Energy Efficiency Directive, Renewable Energy Directive, energy performance of buildings. And those areas are the areas where we provide funding, so mobilize investment and private finance, industry services, products, one-stop shops, a really a success story, and really important tools provided to help implementing energy efficiency and energy and renewable energy solutions. Heating and cooling, a topic which really got much more attention and was also part of the call this year. And energy communities, so activating citizens, regions, energy poverty, as you heard this morning, and also providing policy support. And this project is about providing policy support. So just what happened last year, you see an overview of the different topics. Just to give you a sense of dimensions, I think 310 proposals we received in 2024, 51 are implemented currently out of these topics, and 449 beneficiaries. These topics have a relative high continuity in the program, so many you find for years already, and have a long history of the agency, of this clean energy transition program. This call, which just closed end of September, you might have seen the numbers. We had 12 topics. It's around 91 million for those 12 topics. 319 proposals were submitted. This year, a bit more. A really high jump was from 2023 to 2024, but it's still a relatively high chance, one has to say. And we starting currently the assessment, so we are all very, very busy actually. Yeah, back to maybe what has this project to do with this funding. So the history, you got the grant in 2021, you worked for 3 years, great. I think really very, very good. In the box of policy support, you focused on the recast Article 8. And I think that's super important because this article has proven to be very, very challenging for the member states. And I'm sure also for you in the project so I think what you do is so important to support by investing how we can overcome barriers, governance issues, things which are non-technical, but nevertheless so tangible in the way they hinder the progress of the implementation. And a lot is about bringing people together, exchanging experience, trying to find best practical practices while also supporting solutions which are developed in this project. In that sense, this is at the heart of the ENSMOV project. This is what you try to do, complementing other projects. I know all of you are probably involved at least in one other or many more projects. You find them on the slide, and I see there are a lot of synergies, and I guess the constraint here is your time rather than the material available. And yeah, with that, I'm looking forward to what you learned from the project and what you can brought actually to the implementation and transposition of the directive, which was, as probably already said, this week on the 11th of October, and it will be very interesting to see what the documents are the Commission received about what member states did to transpose the Energy Efficiency Directive. So with that, over to you, and thanks for organizing the exchange here.
Thanks a lot, Imke. That's good to see with the number of proposals that the community in this field is very active. So we also hope that the funding will continue and that we will be able to as you say, to do even further projects. We know that in these days, there are some uncertainties about the future topics. So yeah, we also wait for the future programs to design future projects as well. So coming back to ENSMOV Plus, I realized maybe I didn't introduce myself, so I will do it very briefly. So I'm Jean-Sébastien Brock from ICP, Institute for European Energy and Climate Policy. As I said, I had the pleasure to be the coordinator for this project. I'll be super quick on the introduction of the project because I think most of you already know about it. As Imke already mentioned, that project was to support the implementation of Article 8, previously Article 7, so which is named Member States Energy Savings Obligation. Our target groups included prioritarily public authorities and agencies, but also a broader group of stakeholders. And as Imke said, we try to be complementary. So that's very complementary, for example, to the concerted action in the sense that we also do activities with stakeholders that cannot be part of the concerted action, typically energy companies, ESCOs, and other market players. And we cover the idea of this project was to cover the whole policy cycle. So from the design and implementation, monitoring, verification, up to evaluation and possibly redesign of the policies. You see here the consortium. So we had a very good mix with energy agencies, ministries, national associations of stakeholders, and also research institutes, which made possible really to combine different point of view, different type of expertise, different type of knowledge. What we have done, I will not present it. I encourage you to visit the website, the online platform. That's where you will find everything. And normally that's user-friendly. If it's not, please tell us. We will improve it. But normally the feedback we got was very positive. So we hope that's the case for everyone. In the About section, you will find the background about the legislative framework, so reminders about Article 8 and so on. In countries, you can find information per each country. We are currently updating the country fact sheets. I would say 1/3 of them has been published, and the remaining will be published in the next days. And in resources, that's where you find all the proceedings of the EU workshop we have done, all the reports we have published, and so on and so forth. And you can filter per keywords or topics you are interested in. Here, that's an overview of topics. I will not detail them because right after me, you have the big piece of the feedback on the findings of the project done by Sam Thomas. So I will not repeat what he will present, but that gives you an overview over the cycle of all the projects we have covered. And this project, these topics were selected according to stakeholders' priorities. So at the beginning of the project, we had a stakeholder survey that made possible for us to identify what topics to cover in priority, and without big surprises, that was quite connected to the new topics or the changes brought by the recast of the Energy Efficiency Directive. That's all for the introduction. If you're quick, you can flash this QR code, but otherwise, I think it's around. You will find papers or there. You can find it. If you have used already or you are already familiar with the project, you can already answer the survey. If not, you can wait the end of the afternoon after listening to us and tell us what you think about what they have done. I will not take more time, and I give now the word to Sam Thomas for the summary about the findings from the project.
Well, thank you, Jean-Sébastien. And yeah, Jean-Sébastien does deserve a round of applause for leading the project throughout these past 3 years. No mean job. So thanks so much, Jean-Sébastien, from all of us in the consortium. So look, I am, as Jean-Sébastien said, Sam Thomas from the Regulatory Assistance Project. So we're one of the consortium partners in the ENSMOV Plus project. And well, you can see from the title here, I'm going to be looking at the main lessons learned from the ENSMOV Plus project. I can't possibly go through the whole project because it's such a broad topic, and some of my colleagues that will be speaking later will deal with some of the topics that I won't have time to cover. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of context, and I think one of the key themes for the project is change, and we've seen a lot of change since the beginning of the project. So we came in with EED 2018 in place. And we then moved on to EED 23 with new provisions. At the same time, since the EED 2023, the political environment, the economic environment has changed again. So people who are stakeholders who are designing, implementing policy measures are dealing with, I think, more change in the energy efficiency policy space than they've had to deal with in many, many years. And that has created all sorts of challenges and new issues that our project can really help our stakeholders in managing. So yeah, let's have a quick look at the main provisions in EED 2023 and how those affected the energy savings obligation. I mean, the first one is obviously that more energy savings are going to be needed. As Inka rightly said, energy efficiency is right at the heart of the European Union's strategy to save emissions, but also to make energy more affordable. And yeah, energy savings just have a huge role to play. And we can see that there's a step change up from 0.8% from the 2018 directive all the way to 1.9% by the end of the period. And that 1.9% will be in play from 2031 onwards as well. The second area is around ensuring a just and inclusive energy transition. The topic of energy poverty has obviously really become a major theme in recent years as energy prices have increased. But also we're talking about ensuring that all groups are included in the energy transition. Just from a basic sort of climate change perspective, climate change mitigation perspective, we need the whole of society to be able to engage with changing the way in which they consume energy, moving from fossil fuels to electric fuels, to electricity, for example, or onto a district heating system. All of these things require investment. So ensuring that all parts of society are included in the energy transition has become a huge part of the policy-making process. And of course, it's enshrined in Article 8 of the Energy Efficiency Directive with the priority group share that member states must now deliver amongst priority groups. And that, of course, creates its own new challenges for policymakers. How do you design those policies? How do you target those policies? How do you report on those policy measures? And then the third one is around aligning energy efficiency with our climate goals. And in particular, in Article 8, we now have a fossil fuel exclusion, to give it its sort of shorthand title. So basically, no more support for fossil fuel boilers, for internal combustion engine cars. And well, when we speak to our stakeholders in the project, it seems like most of them are already aligning their policy measures on this aspect of the EED. However, we find in some countries, particularly those where gas is still relatively cheap compared to electricity, that having energy efficiency policy measures that try and encourage electrification in that context is still proving to be extremely difficult. So if that's the kind of regulatory context, we do have some data that we can look at. So how have member states been adapting so far to the changes? Well, the data we have is only 2021 to 2023. So we can see essentially how countries have been not transposing, but implementing the EED 2018, but still with some foresight to the changes that they knew were coming. So if we look at the savings that have been reported in the first two NECPRs, that's the National Energy and Climate Plan reports, we can see that across the countries here, almost all countries are overachieving in terms of the 0.8% new annual savings requirement per year, just a few laggards. But then if we look at the 1.9% per year savings are going to be needed by the end of the decade, very few countries are at that level yet. But we're still at early days. But of course, the thing to remember is that the energy savings obligation, Article 8, is a cumulative obligation. So there's a real benefit to moving quickly. And that kind of trade-off between moving quickly but getting your policy right, I think lies at the heart of a lot of the things that we've been dealing with in ENSMOV Plus. Now, what about the policy measures that that member states have been putting in place? Let's have a look at the 2014 to 2020 period, compare it to the 2021 to 2030 period, what's been expected from the NECPs. And what we see is three key things, I would say. So one is the big increase in the subsidy tranche here, the green tranche in the bottom left, which has moved from 15% of savings up to 32% of savings. And a small, well, a reasonable decrease in the savings we expect from taxes, 17% down to 11%. Now, that's partly, we think, to do with the fact that we've got a longer period now, and taxes basically make fewer savings when you accumulate them over many, many years. The obligation schemes, the energy efficiency obligation schemes, Article 9, a key part of the energy savings obligation, they've gone up a little bit, but definitely gone up in absolute terms because there are more savings required in the new period. So we can see that obligation schemes are increasing, but not dramatically, and that perhaps tells us something about the limits of being able to push costs through to bill payers, given that obligation schemes are ultimately paid for by electricity, gas, other fuel bill payers. So if that's the kind of the context within which ENSMOV is working, we can see here the forthcoming report, Lessons Learned, and you can see I've gone around Jean-Sebastien's policy cycle here, but I've stopped roughly at about 7 o'clock because that's all I'm going to have time to get through, and I do have colleagues that are going to be able to talk about some of the other topics later. So the first one, starting at the top, so informing policy change through studies of energy savings potential. So we're not looking at energy efficiency, and energy efficiency policy has not been created in a vacuum. There we've had at least 50 years of energy efficiency policies, and we've had 11 years of the energy savings obligation in the EED. So we can learn from what we know already, but an absolutely key thing to understanding what we can, how we can go beyond what we already have is understanding the energy efficiency potential that's out there. And we looked at a number of studies led by Solène from AT2E, these ones on the left. Now, I'm just going to get rid of these because I don't want you to just be focusing on trying to read everything on the screen. I just wanted to let you know that it's there on the website, on the platform. So if you want to find out about those schemes, then have a look on our platform. I want you to actually focus on this thing on the right, which is a lot easier to digest. And it's a series of ever decreasing circles from technical potential. So this is kind of the energy savings you can make in theory, down to economic potential, the energy savings that kind of make sense when you look at all the costs and benefits associated with them, to the achievable potential. So this is when you've taken account of all these kind of barriers that are getting in the way of energy savings, and then the actual policy measure potential. So this is the potential from a policy measure that you're looking to appraise, to do an ex-ante evaluation of. And we can see that the studies that we looked at, so some of them were really looking at that policy measure potential, and that's absolutely key for ENSMOV Plus, for Article 8 EED. What can our policy measure deliver, given all of the rules, the many rules around in Annex 5 of EED, for example, like around additionality and so on. So you need to be able to look at policy overlaps, and this is what one of the studies in France was doing when it was looking at the overlap between its white certificate scheme and a tertiary buildings targeting measure. So, you know, what would be additional if we could include new measures in our white certificate scheme? So that's super important. Of course, one of the things we need to do with our policy measures is try and grow that yellow bubble so it gets closer and closer to what's actually achievable, overcome some of those barriers. But it's also really important to look at the top level, the technical potential and the economic potential. And that's where one of the studies we looked at from Denmark was doing. It's got a huge database of all these different technologies that can be put in place, and then it ranks them in a kind of marginal abatement cost curve kind of way that you see for climate change mitigation studies. And when you look at that, you see that there's so much potential that is low cost, well, negative cost, particularly in the transport sector. And these are making huge energy savings. So we're talking mainly about transport electrification. So it gives us a pointer for where our studies can move. Sorry, where our policies can move into, the spaces that our energy efficiency policies can move into. Now then, what about actual policy, hardcore policy design? So this is where ENSMOV Plus is really adding some value, and it's down in the weeds of how you design a policy. And I just thought, so obligation schemes, as I already said, a key part of the EED. It's even got its whole own article, Article 9. And one of the aspects of obligation schemes, which have been studied a lot in the past, is substitution fees or buyout prices. So what are these things? So this basically enables an obligated party, so it's like a utility, an energy utility, a supplier or a distribution company that's been told, you've got to deliver some energy savings. This is the thing that allows them to just pay some money instead. And why would you want to do that? Well, maybe you want to put a cap on the amount of money that the utilities have to spend in order to meet their obligation, because it all gets passed on to bill pay. Okay, yeah, so a key thing is to ring fence the revenues. So if you do get revenues from these buyout prices, from the substitution fees, put them into an energy efficiency fund, ideally one that's already up and running so that you can use the money quickly and make some energy savings through a different method. Thirdly, consider the temporal aspects of buying out and set the price accordingly. Oh my God, 5 minutes. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, essentially, if the obligated parties were going to make savings in year one, they pay the money into a fee in year one, you're going to have to make the savings in year two. In the meantime, you've lost a year's worth of making savings, and the obligation that you've got in the public sector is a cumulative one where there's advantages to doing early action. So set the buyout price accordingly at a higher level than it's going to cost you to make energy savings, so you can make more in the year after the people have bought out, and consider limiting the fees in a way that supports competition in the energy retail market. So that means maybe just having a limit that's in absolute terms, so the small companies can buy out almost all their obligation and the big companies can buy out very little. Okay, we also looked at white certificate schemes in the context of the Commission's commitment to look at EU-wide mechanisms. We had a really nice workshop on it. We agreed basically that in theory it's a really nice idea. In practice it's impossible, but actually the diversity of national schemes is a real strength, and we've seen that particularly, for example, with Spain's white certificate program, which has learned a lot from what's going on in France, and we've even seen some harmonization of the way in which savings are calculated, and that's one of the things that you could try and force a little bit from the center, I think, in the European Union, a bit more harmonization. And there are other market-based mechanisms to try and drive energy savings. What about an energy efficiency auction funded by the Commission, maybe focused on something of real value to Europe as a whole, like solving grid constraints? I can see that there would be a good way of having an EU-wide energy efficiency mechanism that wasn't trying to force an EU-wide white certificate mechanism that I think we all agreed would not work. Now then, what about energy poverty targeting? So we looked at a whole different ways in which countries were trying to define their target groups. And the things that we really noticed was in the French-speaking world, in France and Wallonia, it was really focused on the social aspects. So how much do you earn? What's your household income after you've taken account of all sorts of things that affect how much money you need to spend? Whereas in the other countries we looked at, it was not just about those kind of social indicators, but also the indicators of how well your house was performing, how well your building is performing, what's its EPC rating, how many really badly insulated elements has it got. So different ways of targeting. And then on the policy side, we've seen absolutely shed loads of innovation in this space, and we see innovation continuing because we need to find better ways of targeting and better ways of ensuring the money goes further while still enabling those with the least amount of income to still be able to invest in new technologies. Oh God, I put some. I put a big equation on the screen, so I'm gonna have to just really race through this one. But this is to say these equations really matter. So this is an example of where we worked with another project, a StreamSave project, and we looked at the equation that they used to calculate deemed savings in the EV sector. And essentially, if we just unpick each element of this equation, it tells us a lot. So the first thing is we need to maximize the difference between the cars we're supporting or the vans we're supporting and the vehicle that would be sold in the market. So support those electric vehicles, maybe have a weight-based policy measure, because the EU CO2 regs for new vehicles, they treat all electric vehicles as equal. Doesn't matter how heavy they are, doesn't matter how much energy they're using. So really focus on weight-based measures, like in France, where they have where they're introducing a tax that is weighted by weight, funnily enough. So obviously increase the number of vehicles, just go big. Focus on vehicles that are driven more. What about taxis, business fleets? These are the vehicles that are really driven more. And also there are behavioral measures. So think about how you can adapt eco-driving for the new world of EVs. We need to incorporate measurements in calculations more, but not completely, because there are some trade-offs here. But we can see there's lots of benefits associated with measurement. And actually my colleague Gregor will be talking about M&V and measurement a bit later. So I'm going to skip over this slide just to say the most important thing is that you have really clear and transparent processes. And then my last slide is basically a bit of futurology. So we're currently redesigning policies, but we're going to have to redesign them again as the energy transition changes. We're going to need to support electrification, and we're going to need to work out how to save electricity. So we've kind of forgotten about saving electricity. We've just been talking about switching people from fossil fuels to electricity because, well, that's the key part of reducing emissions. But once you've got all this electricity use, there's a lot of scope now for reducing electricity use, particularly at peak, because that's where it's having most impacts on the electricity system, increasing costs for end users, which is the other part of the equation, supporting affordability. We've got an electrification action plan. We've got an affordability action plan. These two are the key things I think that are going to be driving energy policy going forward. On affordability, we need to work out how to target better, use all those innovative ideas. Here's three things that people told us in interviews that are important relative to this. We need to ensure that no groups in society are excluded in an environment where we've got limited resources in both the private and the public sectors, which means we need to keep on innovating in energy efficiency policy. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Jean-Sébastien to introduce our panel. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Sam. That's quite a task to summarize 3 years of discussions and exchanges in less than 20 minutes. So congratulations, because you made it and you kept the time. So that's wonderful. And now I invite 3 partners to share their own feedback about the project. So we have Gregor, Solène, and Mike. Please, if you want to go on stage. And I will start with Gregor. You were already introduced in a sense by Sam, who mentioned you about M&V, and indeed you were part of the team developing the M&V system, M&V monitoring and verification system in Austria some 10 years ago already. So yes, some quite a journey from there, and you were leading the topic also in this project. So as you have followed the topic for many years, what can you tell us about the changes, the developments you've seen in this particular field of M&V?
Yes, hello, welcome also from my side. I think looking back these years, and let's start in the year 2012, when I think the first of this kind of projects actually started with a very similar consortium, and we were overwhelmed by the EED, I think, all of us. And then in 2014, of course, the serious business started. And what I observed in MRV was, in the beginning, we were talking a lot about the basics. We had endless exchanges on IT platforms on how to define the significant sample of projects to be controlled, how to calculate savings, how to make sure that all the steps in control and verification work. And we had a lot of experience exchange on all levels. And I think this really paid off, because what my impression is for this project, but also for the work since 2021, is that we are going a lot, or we are adapting things that are already in place. So we are not building new things. We are fine-tuning things, and this was also, I think, really mirrored in the project results. So we talked about quite specific issues that are not so straightforward, because actually we dealt with all the basics in the last 8 to 10 years.
Thanks, Gregor. So you give us the overall picture. You're from Austria, so maybe you can give us some more specific insights about the recent developments in Austria.
I think I was partly speaking about Austria as well, but as I followed also other European countries, because I was in the concerted action also responsible for this topic for many years, I think in Austria we had the same situation. We built, and I was involved in that, we built in the year 2015, we built something new, completely new from scratch. Everything was new. Platforms, resources, people, expertise, processes, communication with stakeholders. And I think the Austrian example is a little bit specific, because we built our system in the past for an EOS. Then the EOS stopped. So I think Austria is very well prepared, because now they only have to deal with, let's say, only alternative measures, which is in a way easier, I think, to do MRV for than in an EOS. And maybe something that is true for Austria, but also I think true for many European states, is also looking back at this fine-tuning. I think also in the MRV, in the calculation part of MRV, we are now looking for more, let's say, exotic methods, not the ones on buildings, not the ones on standardized measures, but finding blind spots. One of them is clearly transport. I think the transport sector, especially public transport, is still quite difficult, but this can also be seen in Austria. So not so much going on basics, but trying to fine tune.
Thanks a lot, Gregor. Now we move from Austria to France, and we will get a different picture in terms of background, because France is reporting an obligation scheme only. And Sam told us also that the experience sharing with obligation scheme is quite important, and that's one advantage of having national scheme. And for that, I'm very happy to have you, Solène, because the French scheme is the largest, so it's been looked at a lot by other countries. So do you have concrete examples of experience you shared with other countries?
Yes, Jean-Sébastien. Indeed, for France, sharing experience from our scheme was one of the main topics we discussed in ENSMOV Plus. And particularly, one of the topics was how to mitigate frauds, because as the topic grew up, we noticed a lot of frauds on the subsidies. So this topic was mentioned in the workshop done in Paris in 2023. And during this workshop, we did a special policymaker session where we talk about how to minimize fraud, how to ensure that certificates are quite really the best we could measured, how we measured certificate, in fact. And all this process to discourage irregularities are still ongoing in our policies we are developing right now. So the first thing about mitigating fraud, but we also shared a lot about how we deal with the EOS in France. And during the project, we did some special workshops with the Spanish ministry, but also with Romania. And I believe that this workshop helped the Spanish ministry and also the Spanish agency to launch the Spanish weight certificate, so the KS. So I'm very proud of that.
Thank you, Solène. And we heard also from Gregor that one way of Austria to increase the savings they can report is to look at transport measures. We know that the French scheme was first focused on the residential sector because that was the policy priority. But we've heard that recently there is quite some change and that there is a new boost, let's say, for electric vehicles through the white certificate scheme. So can you tell us a bit about this new change?
Yes, energy poverty is still one of our main focus, but since this year, there is a new priority for the French government, which is encouraging people to acquire electric vehicles. In this last month, we are going two main instruments. So the first one will be the helps for social leasing for electric vehicle in order to help low-income households to acquire electric vehicles. So this measure started in October 2025. And also since July 2025, there is a big help on electric vehicle for everyone. And it replaced historical help subsidies, which was a bonus, ecological bonus. So with these two measures, we make a long-term rental of electric vehicle accessible to low income and also help to buy a light electric vehicle. And it's quite recent, but I think that the early uptake are promising because the subsidies are quite substantial compared to what we had before.
Thanks, Solène. That's nice to hear that, and that's definitely something we want to look at in the future. As you say, that's quite recent, so we don't have a lot of results about it. But let's look at how it develops, and that also shows how the obligation scheme can be adapted to various type of policy objectives and how they can evolve over time. So that's a very, very interesting experience. We move now from France to Poland, and let's come back to the topic that Sam mentioned. He already also kind of introduced you, Mike, mentioning the substitution fee topic. It did came from you, so you put it on the table. So can you tell us, can you explain us why it was, I mean, some say a few things already, but you can tell us more why this topic was important in Poland and what were the developments after the discussion you had with the stakeholders there on that topic?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to tell you that the project is very special and very important because it allows us to focus not on very technical issues, but also on the policy issues. This is super important. And we tried to figure out what is the biggest problem from the perspective of implementation of Article 8 and different, let's say, energy efficiency measures. And we identified a few issues, and one of them was the substitution fee. And this substitution fee in Poland was, as some mentioned, was set up in the regulation, and actually the role of the substitution fee was extremely awkward. It really limited the value of investments. I would say details of the substitution of the mechanism can be studied by you in our publication. So shortly speaking, the substitution fee, instead of helping the market, really hampered the market. And the project itself and our meetings really led to the broader discussion. And right now, our government is working on the really rebuilding the system, also revision of the role of the substitution fee. And I believe that even the discussion about the role of the white certificate system itself.
No, thanks, Mike. And you are quite dynamic. So you also raised another issue during the project, which was the multiplication of the grant schemes for building renovation. And you especially noticed that in Poland. And you look at it from the, let's say, the effectiveness point of view. So which type of instrument was more effective? So can you tell us what you find out from this analysis?
And I would like to assure you that another report will be also translated very soon, so you can learn about our experience. But I was very surprised writing this report, because I found that actually in Poland we have all kinds of instruments. Everything is available, from white certificates through just subsidies, tax levy, and so on and so on. So everything is already on the market. And the biggest program, Clean Air Energy, 2 billion euros a year, huge program. Even on the scale of Europe, it's a huge program. Actually is not measured or very weakly measured. And there are a lot of inefficiencies, and probably cost of implementation of a program is very huge. So we prepared this report trying to figure out how to compare different programs. I think that it will lead to the broader discussion. We started the discussion like 2 years ago or 1 year and a half. And it happened that the Clean Air program actually was ceased, was stopped because of inefficiencies. So it showed very clearly that we were perfectly right to talk about it. And I believe that it will be the topic for the next couple of years, probably. Let's hope for 1 year. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thanks to the three of you. I think we can all together thank our three partners who shared their feedback. That gives you already a flavor of the topics we've discussed, what we have learned, how it was discussed between countries or also at national level. And stay tuned, because in November there will be 2 reports where you will have the summary of what has been discussed in every country, and the report basically from what Sam presented earlier. So thanks again, Gregor, Solen, and Mari. And now we will turn to another part that we have done in the project. So there were workshops, experience sharing between countries, but there were also 2 modeling tasks who worked to provide further inputs to the policymaking discussions. And I'm glad to welcome to the stage our first modelist, Frederick Berger from Fraunhofer ASI. The floor is yours.
Do you turn on the screen? There you. Yeah, so hi first, I'm Frederick from Fraunhofer RSI. I think, well, as he said, our work was more the quantitative part beyond looking at Germany. And it was also kind of trying to use the experiences from other EU projects we had at the beginning, IMCO showing those similar projects, and we tried to take the knowledge and experience and the results also from the more quantitative projects like Odyssey Mirror, MICAT, or also a couple others, and include them. And one point that was very central about this was the approach to gap filling measures. So you might have probably heard about this. Does it work? Right. So the idea behind it is, as a lot of countries in the EU that still have issues and have a gap between the targets they have set in terms of energy efficiency and the measures that are either already implemented or planned. And one idea there is to do gap filling measures. So what's this supposed to mean? So the idea is to take measures that have worked quite well in other countries and apply them to a different context. And well, you can just take the measures that are deemed to be the best or the cheapest, but there's a couple of ways of how to do this, and we developed the methodology of how do we actually propose measures to a certain country or a certain energy agency in a country. So how is this supposed to work? So let's look into this. So the first step, of course, is how do you select those potential measures? So the idea was drawing on the policy assessment tool, which has been developed in a tender, I think, a couple of years back, and has been part of ENSMOV now. And there was a listing of very good measures. So following a series of criteria, they kind of ranked those different measures and looked which ones were actually most productive. The idea in the future, since this was a one-time project, is in the ENSMOV project, we ensured that the questionnaire for the partner countries was adapted, so they would flag successful measures in their countries, so we would have an easier work in identifying them. Second thing is scaling. So the same measure in one country might have a different effect in another. I'll show an example quite soon. So we have to account for the size of the country, of course, but also of the affected sector. An industry measure in a country with a large industry will have a different effect in a country that is more focusing on services, for instance. And then we also included multiple impacts, since that's quite a common narrative. And that has been the next step. We've been drawing on the MICA tool to do this quantification and monetization of impacts. And that is also a way of rating those things. So what do I mean by this? So when we have these things, we can evaluate each measure following a set of criteria. So for one, we can look at the savings that we can expect from this measure in a certain country. We can look at the savings per euro, that can be savings, or as well CO2, annuity, LCOE, but also we can look at multiple impacts, more specifically, a couple of here, but looking at this morning's work, we can also talk about energy poverty impacts, for instance, and use this as a ranking. So let's take an example. Quite popular in our work in ENSMOV has been the German federal funding for energy and resource efficiency in industry or in business, EEV, and quite a successful measure, mainly in industry sector. And what if we use this measure and try to apply it as a proposed measure to Estonia, for instance, our favorite little country in Northeast? So we did a little calculation there, which is part of our report. I'll show you later. And what you see, for instance, is that the savings that you can expect are, even when you scale it to the size of the country, quite different, because the energy consumption of the Estonian industry sector is about 150 times lower than in Germany, for instance. So you'll have those scaling effects, and you need to take them into account when you look at what kind of savings are you going to be expecting. And in the same sense, you can rank this measure according to a certain set of indicators as shown here. And we've done this across several measures. So we have the EEV, for instance, but also the eco bonus from Italy, or the energy and carbon tax from France or Sweden, and many, many more measures out there. And now what you can actually do is, when you have all these measures there, is looking at different criteria. So for instance, let's stick with Estonia. When we look at cost effectiveness, and we have a certain gap, the gap here in the left column, you can fill this with different measures. And looking at cost effectiveness, you can kind of rank those measures and see which measures would be the best suited to address this gap of 2.67 petajoules in Estonia. Or if you take another criterion, for instance, annuity of the measure, we can rank those measures once again and see the results that we get and get another ranking. Similarly, employment effects, once again, different ranking among those measures. And same you'll see if you were to say, we want to do those measures in the transport sector because we're short on measures in this sector. Once again, you'll have a certain rating of measures that have been done somewhere else that could be quite interesting to be used. So to conclude, those gap filling measures can be quite efficient because we learn from the experiences that have been done across Europe and there have been plenty of experiences. As we see, there's a lot of people working exactly on this stuff. And but I think it's paramount to look at how applicable it is to different countries, because as Sam said, there's a reason there's different EOS across Europe, and it's the same for every measure. There's differences in measures, and there's reasons for this, and we need to account for this. In the same sense, it doesn't make sense to propose another subsidy measure in a country that already has plenty of different subsidy measures for exactly that kind of end use. So I think it's more than just providing a list of different measures. It's about looking which ones are best suited for which context. More details are going to be following soon with the deliverable that we provide. That's going to be coming out in November probably. And the idea to make it more applicable and not only a list somewhere in the deliverable is the inclusion in the Mika tool. It's another project, but yeah, integrate this methodology there. So member states can basically look for those measures in the place where they would be searching anyways. That is the work that is going to be done next year. All right. I think with this, I give over to my colleague, Danai, who's been working on other quantitative stuff.
Thanks a lot, Frederic. And just before Danai starts, after our presentation, we'll have time for 2-3 questions. So start thinking about it. Danai?
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Danai Xnoveloni from the Techno-Economics of Energy Systems Laboratory, which operates under the umbrella of the University of Piraeus Research Center. So we will go now into the building sector. We will focus on that. So a bit of introduction, but you have probably heard some of that during the whole day and yesterday. So buildings account for a substantial share of the final energy consumption, more than 40%. And particularly the residential buildings where we are focusing in ENSMOV Plus account for more than 25% of the energy consumption. And we know from all the documents, the legislative documents and all the studies that 75% of the buildings are inefficient, and the majority of them will be still standing in 2050. So retrofitting actions are recognized as a key strategy towards reducing the energy consumption, but also achieving the national and international energy efficiency targets. So this is where policy interventions come to the table to boost this renovation effort. And we see that all of the member states are developing strategic documents, but also specific policy instruments, from regulatory and behavioral measures to financial incentives like grants and subsidies. So what we did in ENSMOV Plus, we focused on 2 applications, one in Greece and one in Croatia, and we took into account the member states' needs. So we talked with the partners in the project that are coming from those countries to discuss what they would like to see. We focused, of course, on the residential building energy performance. And for the Greek application, we focused on the achievability of the energy efficiency targets, and also explored the household cost benefit. And for the Croatian application, we focused on assessing the energy savings that can be delivered from a subsidy scheme. So what those applications have in common, we used a building sector simulation model, so a model that simulates the energy demand. It's published in peer-review articles. I guess the slides will be shared, so you can have an access on the publication. It's a kind of easy to use model compared to others that are dealing with these issues, because it has a modular structure that allows flexibility, and we can do a quicker modeling and simulations. So going now to the Greek application. So residential building in Greece account for 25% of the final energy consumption. Half of the buildings are built before 1981, and to give you a bit of the context, because this is where we focused, the NECP targets require 16% reduction of the primary energy use in the residential sector by 2030 and 20 to 22% reduction by 2035. Then, of course, we have a focus on the worst performing buildings. And also we have specific, let's say, requirements for the annual rates of renovation. You can see the figures here, and also on the chart. Okay. And also based on the NSP, we are targeted for an increased penetration of the heat pumps in terms of the percentage of final energy consumption for heating. So our scope was to investigate the residential building that should be renovated based on construction period, climate zone, and technical system they are using. So we tried to see how these overarching targets can be, let's say, towards the bottom, and identify the appropriate combination of renovation measures. So quick overview of our results in a national level. So what we saw is that the energy consumption for the residential sector can be reduced by 40% by 2050. And then you can see here also what energy savings can be achieved in, especially in, let's say, milestone years. So for 2030, 2040, 2050. And more specifically, we did that for the 4 climate zones in Greece. So you see here specifically the annual envelope renovations for 2 climate zones and the savings that can come from these renovations. And so we see also a sharp decline in the use of oil boilers and elimination during 2040, 2045. And we see also a very good, very high increase in the penetration of heat pumps that can reach 50% in 2050. Going now to the Croatian application, I would do it quick. So our scope here was to investigate the energy savings that can be delivered from a subsidy scheme that targets single-family houses that has an overall budget of 120 million euros. So eligible measures on this scheme are combination of measures both in the envelope and on the heating system, doing measures only in the building envelope, or just replacing the heating system, and PVs were also eligible within the measure. So how we investigated the energy savings? So we combined the energy simulations results from the model you saw a few slides before with an optimization model that where we maximize the energy savings, taking into account some pathways of constraints. Okay, so and for this application, we have some preliminary results, and we are still discussing a little bit with the Croatian Energy Agency. So we saw that higher energy savings can be achieved through full envelope renovation combined with changing the heating system with heat pumps. And it was consistent in all the 6 typologies we examined, and we also saw that higher savings are achieved in continental Croatia. And for the optimization part, we examined 3 scenarios. So the baseline scenario, we put more focus on the envelope measure, and we call this baseline because this is kind of what happened when the application, the call started. So approximately 80% of the applications from the consumers was for envelope measures. Then the second scenario, we say, okay, we will not put that much, we keep the focus on the envelope, but we increase the focus on the electrification through heat pumps, because what we see was that not that many applications were for heat pumps. And then the third scenario, we emphasized a little bit further both the heat pumps, but also combined measures, even in the envelope, not focus on just one measure, but rather renovate the whole envelope. So you can see the results there. It's a bit preliminary, but you can see the difference between the savings that can be achieved between the 3 scenarios. So what we see that putting a bit more focus on the electrification can deliver significantly more savings. And it can also reduce the cost per kilowatt hour saved for the scheme. And I think that's it. So as for Frederick, the same is for us. We will have our report published probably next month. So stay tuned for these results. You will find there more detail for our analysis, synthesis of the outcomes, and some policy recommendations to support the decision-making process. I didn't do this work on my own, so I had huge help from my colleague Dimitra and Irini, which are in the room today, so thank you very much. And I think that's it. I managed. Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks.
You can move it. Thanks a lot, Danai, and also congratulations to Dimitra and Irini as well for all this work. We have a few minutes for questions. So the time that you raise your hand, I have already one that have been transferred from online participant, but that's more a comment, and maybe Marek, you can react to that. That was kind of confirming what you mentioned about the substitution fee and the clean air program. So one participant mentioning that the substitution fee in Poland for the white certificate scheme is almost 8 times lower than the cost per ton of oil equivalent found for the actions, the projects done in the clean air program. Is it an order of magnitude that you have the same 8 times lower for the substitution fee compared to the clean air program?
Could you rephrase the question? Sorry.
The participant mentioned that the substitution fee is 8 times lower than the cost found for the clean air program. Is it correct? The cost to save energy, I mean. Huh?
I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we will need to double check, but that's in line with what you say, that the substitution fee was too low and that the clean air program was not effective enough. So.
Actually, for sure, the substitution fee in Poland is really way too low. That's for sure. And right now, there's even the tender for setting up the mechanism for the substitution fee. This is also for sure. But how high the substitution fee in Poland should be, I have no idea. And what should be the mechanism, also I have no idea. For sure, the putting the level of the substitution fee to the regulation is very tricky, and it's not market oriented. So we can expect that there will be completely different mechanisms for setting up the substitution fee.
Yeah, no, I think that's very clear.
Sorry.
No, that's clear. We have one question there.
Thank you very much, Hans Ryan from DG Energy Scenair. Just a question to the last presenter. Sorry, I didn't catch your first name, Mrs. Vasilakou. On your implementation of the case studies, I understand that you produced models and you've worked closely with the ministries, for example, the Croatian ministry, and that was partly, if I understood correctly, within an existing program that was already being implemented, and you wanted maybe to readjust it and improve it. What I'm interested in is to hear, how successful were you in changing so far the ministry's approaches, and what lessons do you learn on your cooperation with the ministries in presenting these models?
Okay, so I guess because when we started this work, then the calls all started. So I guess when we finalize the work, then this can feed as the recommendation for the next call, which if I'm not mistaken, I think here it's a long-lasting call for single-family houses. So I guess it will be valuable for them, but to what extent they will change how the scheme is structured is remain to be seen. I don't know, Vesna, if you want.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, Vesna from Energy Institute from Croatia. So this exercise was based on already existing scheme in Croatia and allocated money. And together with our colleagues, we wanted to see, is there a way to is there a better way to spend that amount of money to obtain better results? So these may be valuable results. They were still not presented to the policy makers ministry, and in particular our Energy Efficiency Fund, because this is the scheme led by our Energy Efficiency Fund. So we will see. But this was a theoretical exercise to have a proof of future suggestions for improvements. Yeah.
One question to, first of all, congratulations for all the...
Introduce yourself, Vlasis.
Yeah, so I'm Vlasis Egonou, I'm the managing director of ICP, and we've been working with Jean-Sebastian already from the beginning of ENSMOV Plus through all this journey. Okay, next to the congratulations and the fantastic work you've been doing, one question that comes up, and it's a contemporary one, is that maybe to all member states here who are represented, if you have aligned well the measures under the ED spectrum, the Article 8, for instance, or the other measures here more, with measures on the social climate plans, to the extent that you might know, of course, because you know that social climate plans are not published, etc., etc. And mainly this goes to the efficiency measures like the ring fencing one, but also to the more contradictory measures such as the fossil fuel subsidies for, for like income support measures, which are allowed under the social climate plans, but they do not count as savings under the ED.
Well, thanks, Vlasis. That's indeed a topic we addressed. We had a specific workshop on that on March. So the presentation out there, there was, if I'm not mistaken, 3 presentations, Lithuania for sure. Help me if you remember the 2 other countries, but there was maybe Croatia. Yeah, Croatia for sure, and the 3rd country. I'm really sorry to forget about the 3rd country. But my memory from this workshop was that at that time, the social climate plans were still in the making. So that's difficult to say that the Article 8 policies align or that they complement, because that was, let's say, still in the cooking of the what these plans will be. But definitely we see opportunities for interaction, that's for sure. And it was mentioned this morning in the part on energy poverty, that the social climate fund in general is seen as a way to replace the funding from the recovery and resilience fund that are currently finishing. So that's probably the way we will see that, because that's also something that was not possible to see because some had not enough time. But in the results that have been reported by the member state this year about savings in 22 and 23, we see clearly some boosts in the savings reporting, especially in the countries that have used the recovery and resilience fund for their renovation program. I imagine that all of you have heard about the super bonus in Italy, for example, and obviously when you see the amount of money that has been invested in this program, you can see it, fortunately, in the savings that they have reported. So probably, yes, the next step is to see how this can be used, how the funding from the Social Climate Fund can be used so that we keep this momentum and that it's not like a stop and go with this big peak from the fresh money coming from the recovery and resilience plan, and now that it would be a question mark how this can continue. And that makes an excellent transition to the next topic and the next presenter. So it was not, for the ones listening, that was not our purpose. Vlasis just came with a question like that, but it's a perfect topic. And I'm very happy to give the word again to Vesna to discuss about diversifying our financing. So we continue the discussion on that topic.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Sebastian. And once again, my name is Vesna and coming from Energy Institute in Zagreb, Croatia. And I will talk about financing or the money and what's there to talk about. We need it, we don't have it, or we have it, or we don't use it as well as we could. So let's dive in into issues regarding financing that we talked about during our projects. And for that, let's use Sam's sum up of our findings. Thank you, Sam, for making my life easier in creating this slide on findings on ENSMOV project about financing. So yeah, there are limited financial sources. They are not unlimited and indefinite in both public and private sector. There is a mobilization of EU funds, but they are not indefinite also. There is a social climate fund, but let's see how we are going to use it. We should be focused on cost effectiveness, but are we? So these are all issues that were raised, but also some recommendations that we have seen arise from these issues related to need for innovative schemes, need to focus a bit on obligated parties also on this matter, and also what is well, specific for Croatia, but maybe not only Croatia, or I'm sure not only Croatia, is the need to move away from subsidies or grants. So let's just see in Croatia what is how this is in our country. And let's set the scene just briefly. We have increased target, of course, for Article 8 of EED. We are one of the countries that plans to deliver this target, but by combination of energy efficiency obligation scheme and alternative measures in 50-50 ratio. And basically the most important policy driver, the most important driver for energy efficiency is money, is subsidies, is grant schemes that are available in Croatia for in particular energy renovation of buildings, public and residential, but also in other sectors like industry, through different sources of this funding, mostly being European, but also, as I said, national funding from our energy efficiency fund. And in that environment, exactly the challenges are these limited private financing, and it also exactly this reflects to the operation of energy efficiency obligation scheme, which I will just briefly tell you about right now. So about energy efficiency obligation scheme in Croatia, we have obligated parties in all supply, so electricity, gas, heat and oil products. There are, to be exact, 37 of them, but that number varies. And this is the main question in the environment where grants are available, when they are huge, and when both public sector and citizens are waiting for grants to be published and are doing nothing in between. How can they compete with that, and how can they offer anything to their customers that will be as attractive as grants? And this was really hot topic in Croatia during ENSMOV Plus project, and we learned a lot about problems of obligated parties, and these are real problems. But and in that environment, they are actually going to very low cost measures like information leaflets or fuel additives, measures with short lifetimes. So cumulative effect of these savings is really not as we wanted. And again, in this environment, some shift that energy Services Directive and Energy Efficiency Directive in all its editions wanted to achieve, like moving from just complying with obligation to offering new products, new services to their customers is actually still missing. And what about alternative measures? As I said, money, 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 but in form of grants, grants, grants. That is what we have in Croatia, which is great because people are renovating their buildings, industries are modernizing their facilities, but then again, these amounts of subsidies are 60 to 80%. 60 to 80%. Of course, you are waiting for the grant. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. So this is this is the situation, and for instance, one also side effects of grants. When you have huge grants, 2 billion in 5 years, we are much smaller than Poland. When you have this kind of grants and you need to spend that money in short time, very short time, in a small market with limited construction work and other capacities, how does it reflect to cost effectiveness? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So this is the situation that requires that we move forward, and as directive also is promoting ESCO and energy services, energy performance contracting. We also have a proof in Croatia that when we apply ESCO projects with small incentive, we actually deliver deeper renovation, more comprehensive renovations, and more cost-effective renovations. So the next frontier for us, hopefully, so something which is being discussed, is really moving forward from this kind of situation, focusing on grants and moving towards more market-based or innovative, or whatever we call these instruments. One of the issues being considered and looked for is actually establishing an organized market for energy savings, where basically all players will find their benefits in participating in such a market. And we had a great opportunity to listen about the most recent such system in Spain, and hopefully we will move forward in that direction. The transformation of energy efficiency obligation scheme has also started. At least I want to mention buyout fee, or in this sense, because we have exactly opposite situation than in Poland. We set it too high and it was not used at all. So now it was recalculated, and hopefully it will be set in such a manner that it provides incentive for obligated party to use it if they don't have any other possibility or cheaper possibility, and also to gain additional money and put it in those areas where it's mostly needed, and that is energy poverty. So coming to this ring fence that we need to achieve. So yeah, this is all related to money, all related to financing. We have it, we use it as we use it, and we should use it differently in the future, and there is a winding road ahead of us, bumpy probably, to change this system, to make it more trustworthy, to make it more efficient, and hopefully we are not on the road to nowhere. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vesna. Before we take a second round of questions, we have a second presentation also about forward-looking work, actually from one of the sister projects from StreamSafe Plus. But if you have questions, keep them, because after Matthew's presentation, we will have time for questions before the coffee break. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jean-Sebastian. My name is Mateusz Pusznik. I come from Josef Stefan Institute from Slovenia. I work at Energy Efficiency Center, and I'm presenting the collaborative work in scope of StreamSafe Plus project, where we try to assess future energy efficiency policies and trends using ODEX methodology. Just to break the ice, I see some young faces in the audience. Who's that guy on the picture? So of course, you know. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Okay, it's Bon Jovi from the band Bon Jovi. It's John Bon Jovi, and the band's single "Living on a Prayer" was published in 1986. And in this song, the band sings about being halfway there. So we're going to check in this presentation if he was right in the 86. So back to StreamSafe Plus project. The project is tackling three major pillars: the improvement of capacity for energy savings calculation, development of the knowledge hub through web-based platform like a central repository, and to facilitate peer-to-peer cooperation to foster the cooperation between member states. Why this matters, why what we are doing really matters, because as already mentioned today, energy efficiency is the most important fuel in all of the final energy consumption sectors. It's cost optimal and also quite fast to deploy. Another important thing is that current situation on data availability in European countries is that the data is usually quite dispersed, fragmented, and it's not consistent throughout all European countries. So the plan was to propose a harmonized, generalized framework to assess future energy efficiency policies in member states. Now I'm going to just present two major results of our assessment. The first is without the statement that without policies, Slovenia would use 76% more energy in 2050 compared to the current plans in NECPs. And the no policy scenario for Croatia is even higher, resulting in 88% increase in 2050 if the measures from NECPs are not implemented. So these numbers show that energy efficiency is not just optional, but it's critical for climate and energy security goals that we are following. When we were trying to look around for possible methodologies for assessing energy efficiency policies, each time we came across ODEX index, of course, we were aware of this index before, and the literature research guided us that there is something good with this approach. So we've taken the benefit of it. So walking around the European large cities, you can see a lot of different technologies in transport sector, a lot of buildings being refurbished, old buildings, new buildings are being built, some interconnection between industrial sector, district heating, all those sectors represent a really complex image or complex situation on energy use in the country. And all these complexities have to somehow be reflected in the, if properly done, in the national energy balances. So a lot of complex models are also behind that kind of calculations on a national level. I was talking about ODEX index. This is a widely recognized EU tool that was developed under the Odyssey Mur initiative. This initiative is with us, if I'm correct, for 30 years now. Maybe, Jean-Sebastian is agreeing with me. And it tracks sector-specific progress in all final energy consumption sectors. What is important and really useful that comes with this assessment is that indicators are expressed with physical activity data, which means for industrial sector, kilotons of product is used, which is somewhat better represents the link between physical production and energy use if we would use value added or some economic activity data. So what was our contribution? ODEX has already been proven with its traditional retrospective use, meaning the assessment for the ex post assessment, and what we've done in the scope of the project was we used the same approach as for ex post assessment of energy efficiency policies. We have done that for future-oriented projections. So we were testing policies forward in time. So in a way, we did ex ante assessment. So we have done this for two countries, Slovenia and Croatia, for two pilot countries. Why we have decided to choose these two countries? Well, two StreamSafe Plus project partners were involved in the preparation of NECPs and of course expert basis for NECPs. So we had a lot of information and detailed data and de-aggregated data available on our table. So we have decided that we can capitalize on that. This is the representation of activity data that was used for the calculation, the de-aggregation of industrial sector, different technologies in transport sector, surface area, number of dwellings for household center, and services with floor area. These are the main activity data that were used in the assessment. These are not the direct results of the assessment. This is merely a presentation of the NECP's energy balances up to 2050 for both countries, and this red indicator highlights the targets for 2030 in line with Article 4 of EED. And these are the calculations for both countries, the cumulative savings that were assessed with our proposed methodology. We can see the slight difference in the policy direction, energy efficiency policy directive, the direction of both countries. For Slovenian case, we rely mostly on the savings that come from transport sector, followed by household services and industrial sector, whereas in Croatian case, the majority of the savings are coming from household sector, followed by transport services and industrial sector. This is one way of presenting our results. Another Another way, quite interesting way of presenting the results is this one. This graph represents the average yearly savings for a certain period, and this first bar represents the period from 2050 up to 2015 up to 2022, which was obtained from Odyssey Muir database. And so being ex post assessment, and from 2023 on, these are the results of our ex ante assessment. What is interesting here is that in both cases, if we are about to reach the targets that are set and the plans that are put in set in the national NECPs, we have significantly increased our efforts, especially in the period, in the Slovenian case, in the period up to 2030, and in Croatian case up to 2040. Another way of presenting the results of the assessment is these two graphs. This is the aggregated representation of the results. The blue part of the bar is representing energy consumption, which is in line with national NECP, and the assessed savings are represented by orange bars. We have done this also for on a sectoral level. This representation is aggregated level for the whole final energy use in the country. So key takeaways. The first takeaway would be that John Bon Jovi was right. We are halfway there in the case of Slovenia and Croatia, and if we are about to achieve the targets that are set and implement, we have to significantly increase our ambitions, especially in line of the newly proposed 2040 goals. There are still, the data availability remains a major challenge. The different access to data in member states remains a major challenge. But we are doing a lot to trying to overcome it. So we invite you to participate, to collaborate with us. If you're interested in this kind of research, get in contact, and that would be all from my side. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Matthew. So in your slide, you mentioned a future paper, but there is already implementation of this paper that was presented at the Energy Evaluation Europe 2025 conference last month in Berlin. And the proceedings will soon be available on the Energy Evaluation Europe website, probably in the coming weeks in November. So if you want to be informed when this paper and when the other papers from the conference will be available, just stay tuned and follow the ENSMOV Plus account, because we will share the news as soon as we know. And well, I'm well placed to know when it will be published, so don't worry, we will know it very well. Thanks a lot also, Matthews, for showing again, and that was also the case in the two previous presentations, the synergies with other projects. If you remember well, Frederick's presentation, he mentioned Seed MICAT, for example, and the use of the MICAT tool in the work he has done, and also the policy assessment tool that comes from Odyssey Muir. We have seen from Matthews also reference to the use of Odyssey Muir as well. And if we refer to Dana's presentation about the DREAM model, that's a model that has been developed thanks to a combination of European projects. So all this hard work unfortunately cannot be done in one go, in one project. So that's very important that we have these interactions between the several projects to do these synergies. And I take advantage of that to acknowledge the team of Odyssey Muir. As Matthew said, it has been here for 30 years. So especially to the founders, so I have a friendly thought to Didier Bosberg from Adam that has retired from the project recently, Bruno Lapillon from Enerdata, who is still here, and notably also Wolfgang Aschheimer, who is there with us, who are the three, let's say, father behind behind Odysseumio, and we presented sister project. But when we speak about Odysseumio, maybe that's a kind of mother project actually for the others. Okay, I talked too much. Before the coffee break, we can take 2 or 3 questions. I don't know if you, if some of you have questions either to Danae, to Frederic, to Matthews, to Vesna, or if you want to come back to other topics that were discussed earlier. Any? Okay, you want your coffee. Right, so let's go to the coffee break. You can discuss directly with the speakers, and we come back in 20 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Are we ready to start? Is the sound okay? Okay, great. Welcome everyone to the final panel of this conference. I'm super happy to be moderating this panel. I'm Marion Santini. I work with Sam at the Regulatory Assistance Project, and I've been working on energy efficiency for quite some time now. And I'm quite excited by the ENSMOV project because it's so important for implementation to look at what's going on at different member states level. And we have a lot of expertise today in the room on the implementation of energy efficiency policies. And what we're doing now with this panel is we will perhaps step back a bit from what we've been busy with the calculation of energy savings, and think about the broader picture. What's next for energy efficiency? So the Commission yesterday published its work program for next year, and it was quite interesting because in this work program, the Commission intends to propose an energy efficiency framework for the post-2030 time frame. So it's very relevant that we are having this discussion today. The Energy Efficiency Directive has been in place for 15 years, so almost. So it's been a long time. And I mean, is it working well? Do we need to see things differently? Are we open to that? So that's why we have this great panel today with Antonin Chaplot from the Coalition for Energy Savings. I will introduce all of the speakers a bit longer, but just to give you a bit of a round, we also have Dimitar Kolicha from URENA, the Insulation Manufacturer Association, and we have Tseni Varfi from SMART and the Flexibility Organization. So I will introduce each of you a bit longer, but for the moment, I'd like to just start this discussion about energy efficiency framework with Antonin. And Antonin, you've worked for many years on the energy efficiency framework. You and I work together a lot, so we know each other quite well. It's not a secret. You are with the Coalition for Energy Savings. So it's a stakeholder, a coalition of businesses and civil society requesting more ambitious energy efficiency legislation to the EU. And you have been very engaged in the past revision of the EED. So you know the Energy Efficiency Directive very well. And you are also following its implementation very closely. And therefore, I would like to ask your opinion about something, which is, are we in a good position to reach our 2030 energy efficiency goals?
Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, Marion. That's a lot of pressure, saying I know both the directive and its implementation well. So the question, as we said, halfway to 2030, are we delivering? Are we on track? I will take a EU level approach. Of course, we heard a lot about the national, what's happening at national level. I just want to give you recent data that we have on the progress on energy efficiency. So the most recent data we have, and we'll have more recent data for 2024 next few weeks, but for now we have data on 2023. The 2023 for energy efficiency in Europe was actually a very good year because we made some significant progress from 2022 to 2023. I think I remember by heart, so let me try. For primary energy consumption, we lowered primary energy consumption by 3.9% between 2022 and 2023, and final energy consumption by 3%, which is much more than what we have experienced in recent years. Then you have some questions. Is that structural measures? Is that also because of high energy prices? But it's still a good result when you look at absolute energy consumption. And the Environment Energy Agency, European Environment Agency, finds that if you continue down that path to 2030, with a similar amount of progress year by year, you can actually reach the 2030 targets. So in a sense, we're on the right track if we only look at 2023. Then the situation is that in 2022, we'll have recent data for 2024 that might not be as much as a progress as for 2023. We might also have some difference year by year, meaning that we still need to improve our progress year by year to actually get to 2030. Of course, this is 2023 data, so we didn't have the new EED implemented, the new EPBD implemented. So the positive aspect of that is that we'll have new measures from Article 8, from different articles that are both in directives that will deliver even more energy efficiency, energy savings. So we can get on the right track. And then going back again to a bit more of the negative side is that when you look at the final NACP update, so the National Energy and Climate Plans, the Commission found that if you sum up all the national contribution that have been presenting the plans, you don't add up to the 2030 EU energy efficiency targets. So for final energy consumption, the all contribution combined is 8.1%. But when you look at the EU target, it's 11.7%. So you have those 3.6% missing that for now are not being, let's say, committed by member states to be delivered. So the Commission is taking that into account. There was a new roadmap for energy efficiency that was introduced with 10 action plan, 10 points and 6 deliverables that aims to accelerate even further energy efficiency measures. But again, that still means that we need more measures, and we need to make sure also that, of course, member states deliver on their plans in the NACPs, because there's a difference, of course, between the planning and the delivery of those savings. And we heard a lot about the actual counting of the saving. How do you make sure those savings are really delivered the way you intend them to? The last thing I want to say when looking a bit beyond is that we have, and I think it was mentioned, new initiatives coming out. So we have affordable housing plan, we had affordable energy plan that was already published. We have an electrification action plan, and we have some other initiative, for example, a data center package that could also look at efficiency. So the Commission is planning a new thing. It's also, and we know that from yesterday, also planning potentially the post-2030 framework for energy efficiency. We'll see how that plays out as well. But we see that more is happening, but I really think we should. So the answer to your question is, if we look at 2023, yes, we seem to be on track, but let's not take that for granted. Let's still continue accelerating measures to make sure that we get to our 2030 goals, and even why not to overachieve it. I mean, it's a target, but there's no limitation to overachieve the target if you want it. And I think, and we will do that at the coalition, and we're working for now on implementation reports on the ED. So looking at what's been happening, some good case studies, some good practices that we can find on the ground. And it was very interesting to hear that today as well. But we will, at the coalition, we'll make sure that we really keep track on progress. And then we'll also reach out to the Commission to say, well, this is not, let's say, happening fast enough, or this is a bit missing in the current framework that we have, to make sure that we can also improve year by year all the way to 2030, and not to wait, let's say, 2028 to 2029, where we realize that we're not going to make it. So yeah, that's what we're doing as well.
Thanks, Antonin. I have a question for you, but perhaps also for the audience to think about. It is, what is missing from the current EU framework in order to make more progress today?
So the simple answer is a 2040 energy efficiency target. Of course, that's also what's been happening in the policy context. There's some discussion on this. So because it gives even a longer term perspective. I mean, 2030 is what, 4.5 years away, even less by now. So when you look at investor certainty, and maybe Dimitar will tell a bit about that as well, you need to give a bit more long term than 4 years. So that will help definitely. And the other one, and this is going to be covered a little bit in the electrification action plan, we hope, is to really better use the synergies between electrification and energy efficiency to make sure that you kind of deliver on the two agendas at the same time, and that by electrifying the economy, you also deliver much more energy savings from end uses because of electrification. But in general, you also make the energy system, which are going to be electrified, more efficient. And that way you can also both play on primary energy consumption and final energy consumption, which are still today 2 targets that we have at EU level. So I think that will be very important as well.
Thanks a lot. So now moving to Dimitar, you follow energy and climate policy for Eurema, who represents mineral wool insulation material. And you also have a very long-standing experience with different energy policies and a very good understanding of grids and how they work. And therefore, my question to you is, I think you've been looking a lot at the role that buildings can play in the electrification process. And do you think this role is recognized? And, could you say a few words about that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot for that. Quite a nice words from you. I was not expecting such kind of introduction. But to get straight to the question, we can see that we're starting to see more and more interest into this angle, but it's definitely still not explored enough yet, let alone in policy. Now, when it comes to the future innovation, when it comes to the future achievement of energy savings, etc., we need to be peak demand aware. That's a main message that we've been having for about a year and a half so far. Otherwise, we will end up with some pretty bad negative externalities and bottlenecks. We will technically overbuild transformers. We will put cables that one day will not be necessary to be there. We're putting systems for heating and cooling that will be oversized in the very near future. And that comes with, of course, with other problems. And in the end of the day, you're going to increase the cost. At the same time, we also have to be aware, as Antonin mentioned, that we're also having industry electrifying. And that in the very near future will become a battlefield. You will see a competition between residential sector and industry for the grid connection, first and foremost, and of course for the access to clean power. We are one of those sectors, for example. Our sector is really committed to decarbonization, of course, with different methods, electrification being one of the main ways, and of course, cleanest and mostly probably also energy efficient. But if we have such kind of peak problems, that would become really hard. At the same time, we also have to understand that flexibility plays a very big role, and I'm kind of giving a segue to saying, but flexibility is also quite important for us, because if we manage to have buildings much more flexibility capable for longer periods of time, of course, through installation, now I'm making almost like a pitch for our products. But nevertheless, this is very important for us because our processes, not only ours, the energy intensive processes of many sectors, they cannot be that flexible. Just because the nature of the process itself, when it comes to our sector, we cannot create flexibility for 1 or 2 hours. We cannot stop production for 1 or 2 hours because we're melting very hard to melt materials. Nevertheless, if we can decrease those peaks and we can work in conjunction with the flexibility services and the buildings themselves, now you get a lot of synergies. Synergies that's according to our studies, we see that the total overall cost of the energy system, if you combine electrification with good installation, energy efficiency measures, and flexibility assets, you get actually lower total system costs, which is a thing that we're trying to explain to policymakers and, of course, the general public alike.
Thanks. I'm happy you mentioned the efficiency of industry and the activities that industry are doing. So in your sector, do you still see scope for energy efficiency improvements?
Definitely. Now, of course, it depends what type of energy you're using. Are you using electrons? Are you using molecules? It also is a matter of how do you heat and cool your own personnel inside. There's some very good examples from some of the factories where you can have very good synergies with the district heating systems, whether to stop using them or to help them out in the near future. Such kind of synergies can actually happen. So they kind of count towards energy efficiency. Of course, a lot of the processes can be technologically made more efficient themselves. We have already demonstration how just by switching a few components, you'll need less energy for certain melting processes. But of course, using insulation in industry is, for other sectors now, a little bit out of ours, is also quite important. Technical insulation has a much higher return on investment in comparison to insulation for buildings, extremely high, less than 5 years. And this is not a very well-known fact. I think our guys have not done enough advertisement on this. But I will encourage, of course, people to look into the European Technical Insulation Foundation, and they have very good recent data that showcase how energy efficiency means competitiveness, means making more with less. That's an important message that, again, I want to reiterate here.
Thanks a lot for mentioning these aspects also of system efficiency. I think the conference today was quite busy with figuring out how to achieve savings in the final use sector, but increasingly we are in a world where the efficiency of the whole system is becoming more and more important and more relevant, also in view of the transition we are seeing towards more renewable energy sources. And I'd like to now speak with Tseni Varfi from Smarten. Tseni, you are the head of policy at Smarten, and you represent a growing industry that is very key for the energy efficiency of the system, flexible demand management. Can you explain to us what is flexibility and why isn't it happening more systematically?
Okay, do we have 10 hours? No, I will try. No, thanks for because you'd make a nice connection with everything. So system efficiency is something we don't speak too much, actually. We speak about energy efficiency as a principle, but not system efficiency that much. And to complicate a little bit more things, and Marion tackled it pretty well, is we talk a lot about flexibility. Now, everything that Commission has published in the last months, particularly this year, they have flexibility all over the place. The problem is who understands exactly what that is, because you have flexibility from producers, generators, you have for consumers, so flexibility, you have also from the system operators. So there are 50 shades of flexibility. And which one do you pick and which one do you understand? So for long, the one that was well understood, I think, is the system operators, because they operate the system, they do also flexibility. The one we do, and you say it right, it is a growing business because it's on demand. So how do I have flexibility from the demand? How can I empower that? And actually, although we need, and we believe at Smarten that we are important, when you look at the system operator or discussion we're having around Brussels, they still consider us as niche. Because they said, I don't know, as a customer, how can I use the potential of flexibility? What does it mean? Is it implicit? Is it explicit? Implicit comes from dynamic tariffs. They come from time of use prices. So it's tariff-based. Explicit is really when the customer has to play around with the markets and see where he can adjust the consumption so it corresponds to the lowest price. And then build also in basis of a grid congestion, avoid also grid congestion. Now, why is that difficult? Because although we have a perfect legislation in terms of everything has been done and we lobby hard, I think we have done our job perfectly. We have 70 provisions today in the European legislation from EMD, electricity market design, EPPD, all these 55 packages, and they are not transposed, implemented. So as simple as that. You cannot use the potential while you don't have a market to bid for aggregators. You don't have the potential to use that. You are not remunerated if you become more flexible. Hence, flexibility remain untapped. So this is our main battle. But the point is, what is difficult to change in the perspective is that nobody is thinking that should go as first principle. No, I would say, but one of the first criteria. For instance, energy efficiency passed pretty well. They captured the momentum and they said, okay, let's put it as a principle because it's important. But when you think about, well, I have a grid congestion, I have connection problems, you will not think as a flexibility first. You will think, okay, let's build more transformers, let's fix the system, and then flexibility, if it's there, it's okay. And that also comes with a component because it's difficult from the business side, because flexibility service providers are business-oriented minded and system operators are rational animals. So they don't connect very well how it works. Basically, the system operators are saying, if I need flexibility in a specific time of the day, between 1 and 2 hours, and I press the button and I tell to the flexibility service provider, now you need to provide flexibility and you are not available, then I'm done with you. You are not credible anymore. You are not, I cannot trust you. And the flexibility system providers say, okay, but at that time you asked, it was difficult. I was not available for this reason. They don't care anymore. You are out of their connection point, or let's say the system. So this is more or less where we stand in terms of flexibility on the demand side, obviously.
It's really interesting what you're saying about not being able to call on someone to provide a service at some point several people in this room were also looking at whether energy efficiency projects could, provide a service that they would sell to system operators, and hasn't really picked up because of this uncertainty related to the energy savings you would achieve. And now the way I see it is that if flexibility markets or if flexibility would access energy markets more easily, this would be a very good source of revenues for projects which would combine efficient, flexible systems. And I think there's still something, some synergies that we would need to work on that front. From the I know you guys have looked into implementation, and you've released the guidebook on implementation. Now, in this room, there's a lot of people working at national level. If there was perhaps, one thing where you would, ask people to go back to their national framework and perhaps check whether it's done well, what would it be? Where would you ask them to look at?
Read the implementation guidebook, obviously, but no, what we did, it was interesting because we put ourselves in 3 heads. To be honest, I have little value on this because it was initiated before I even came to SmartM, but it was interesting because they are looking, okay, if I have to implement this provision, first, how I understand it. Secondly, if it was in the lenses of system operators, how would they, for instance, just taking an example, procuring flexibility, what does it mean for system operator? How they should procure flexibility. So procurement of flexibility is basically as a platform. You put your needs, and the service provider need to put what you are requiring. So it's like the system of hotels, basically. I need your system, I need your room for this day to be available, and so on. So the principle is simple. And then we put it in the lenses of aggregators and say what the aggregator has to do, how to build the business, why you should keep in mind when transposing this, and then the regulators. The regulators, they were a little bit empathetic to what we came with. System operators less, depending whom, of course. It's not, we have a lot of DSOs in Europe, 4,000, so I would imagine they don't think alike, I hope. And then DSOs a little bit less because they are less also. But so the regulators are trying to say, okay, this is helpful for me. It kind of facilitates the work. But then again, it depends on the context, on the realities back home. I know, for instance, local flexibility markets are very well in some countries, basically in the North countries. When you go to Italy, they just do pilots one by one. And when the pilot is over, nothing happens afterwards. So if I have to pick one, I would say just be conscious that it has to be done at some point in time. So it's better to do it now, recognizing independent aggregators, trying to have these flexibility markets. So as fast as possible. We are already late. The provisions are, some of them are from 2019. I'm still wondering what's happening.
Yes, are we halfway there? It's a good question. Now, thinking about what's happening at member states level, I would like to perhaps go back to Antonin and Dimitar and think about, if there's one thing you would change about how energy efficiency policies work today, what would you change?
That's a good one. It's not going to help the life of implementers, but at least what I'm struggling with is often to understand from the concept phase of the policy measures to the actual end results, like the general timing, how long does it take, how long can you expect results? I think it's hard, at least to me and maybe to some other people at EU level, to understand how fast you can deliver the savings, how reliable they are, and to achieve our goals, because of course the Article 4 target inside the ED is an absolute energy consumption goal. So you have an Article 8 target, which is energy savings, but you sometimes miss the link between the two, because of course some energy savings can be delivered, but then you have something else happening at the system of your economy. So you don't exactly know how it's going to, let's say, relate to the overall energy consumption of your economy. which is of course very important as well. So having this, it's very hard to practice by words, but having this really understanding, and it goes a bit to the Fraunhofer presentation. So having this understanding of this policy measure will be presented, it will take a few years to have impact, but it will grow in terms of impact because more people are going to do that. And having this kind of pre-concept of the measures being presented are going to really get us to our objective rather than having the, let's say, opposite, which is you wait for the measure to be implemented and you have an idea of, okay, did we make it or not? And I mean, we're talking about halfway to 2030. The most logical situation is that we're understanding 2032 or even 2033, whether we made it to 2030 in that sense, because you have Eurostat data taking some time. And I know the Commission is also working on some kind of better understanding on real life impacts and short-term understanding of impact rather than to wait 2 or 3 years to understand what are the impacts of the measures put in place. But it's a very hard thing to do, but having this better idea of the real life and the time that will take for policy measures to have an impact, I would say.
That's a very interesting point, and I will allow myself to comment on that. So I think, evaluation of policy measures is very important. It's crucial. It's really important to figure out, like the kind of cost effectiveness of the measure and whether, we should be testing different approaches. It takes time as well. And I think, having some indicators that would be very clear and that we would be able to track exactly where we're going with the different sectors, I think would be very helpful. We don't have that at EU level, and I think it's missing to figure out how the sectors are doing. Dimitar, do you have a suggestion for improving energy efficiency policies nationally?
Well, at the moment, the main focus that I would like to put is, of course, implementation of the current framework. And if we're talking about the future one, it should try to ensure that there are no corners cut the current framework when being extended with targets, etc. But again, we managed to get proper calibrated measures that work in synchronization. For example, one easy way to cut corners is how do you calculate certain targets? I'm talking about the EPBD, for example. A big problem that we're probably going to see for the implementation is primary energy factors in different countries. We see already certain countries like France, they decide to cut it quite quickly, quite rapidly. And what does that mean? That means that a lot of buildings are all of a sudden energy efficient without doing anything. Such kind of things the new framework must look into and try to tackle beforehand, before we have that problem. I would also add that it would be very important to think a little bit outside of the box as well when we're talking about this peak issue and the future energy system of Europe. If we want it to be autonomous, we want to be competitive. If we want, of course, people to be happy what kind of buildings they live, that they want to be comfortable inside, that would mean that we will need to have certain mechanisms and funding that goes to interventions that combine the green operators and how they're working together with the building sector. For example, we already have white certificates that can be used, but we already have flex connection agreements. But we probably have to see outside of the EU what's also going on. Now, we have already some pilots, of course, here and there in Europe about big reduction certificates, credits for connection. If you're a sector that manages to reduce demand, especially peak demand, that you get a connection priority. Such kind of elements, such kind of interesting new concepts that have been tested in Australia and of course other places overseas. We need to look into them because yes, Europe has been very good at setting rules, has been very good at creating regulations, but out there good stuff is happening as well, and it's happening quicker than us. So that also goes a little bit into the competitiveness issue. But yeah, the first thing would be please ensure that corners are not cut. And the second one is be more creative.
Thanks, creativity. Definitely, I like that idea. Senia, I was wondering, so recently I bought a heat pump and it works very well, no problem. But it's not doing anything with the grid. And I was wondering, why is that? Should something change in, for example, the subsidy I received, or what could happen so that I, as a consumer, can participate in this market? I would be very happy to change my consumption habits somehow because my house is very well insulated.
You want to become a prosumer, but you are already in a way. But That is a good question. So basically, for long, we thought electrification ends by buying a smart device. So that is done, new checklist. Now we understand that there is another element where you can become more efficient and interact with the grid is to become flex devices. Either the heat pump should have a system in itself by design, or to have a smart, we call it sub-meter, so you can read and engage with the grid, so you can know the consumption and you adjust it. Now, in the future, and some member states have done even further, like by design, and you don't have to do anything. So it switches and so on. Even you don't even understand that it's being switched off because you still have the heating in the system and it interact with the grid. So, but this I think that will be in the future. I mean, for the time being, you can have a heat pump, but nothing will happen. It will not make a value to you as a customer. And that is unfortunate because you make the investment. So you adjust already your habits, let's say, or consumption. So honestly, this is something that is still in the discussion. So it's code of conduct for the appliances. And quite funny enough, the Commission is not thinking to have flexibility in it because they think it's out of reach and it touches upon complexity, how this device will communicate with the grid. Then you have the complicated issue of the smart metering with other sub-metering communication. So it's also a technical issue that nobody's happy because you have also cybersecurity elements of it. Who connects to the grid, communicates with the grid, what data are, and who takes granted this data for what purposes. So it's a long discussion. So for you right now, I would say there is nothing to be done, unfortunately, to make it short. But there is a discussion on how flexible you can become. You can buy yourself like a sub-meter so you can adjust a little bit with the hope that it will interact more with the grid. Yeah.
Thanks. I think it's a pity because we receive subsidies for doing these improvements, and then our appliances do not actually operate to their best efficiency. Now, I mean, perhaps we can open up the discussion to the audience, and I mean, I've asked everyone to think about if there's one thing they would like to change from the way things are done right now. So perhaps if you have questions, you can also tell us what you would like to change from the framework. And I see people have a very reflective faces, so I'm expecting a lot of cool questions. See, Sam and Wolfgang.
So one thing I'd like to see changed just reflected in maybe in the EU, the post-2030 framework, is the different value of efficiency in particularly at different times of the day, the peak issue, but also maybe the geography. Because at the moment, 1 kilowatt-hour saving equals 1 kilowatt-hour saving. It doesn't matter whether it's even in the middle of the day in Spain in the summer when maybe you actually don't want to save any energy at all, still has the same value, at least in the EU framework. But I wanted to ask a provocative question. So Dimitar, you mentioned Australia actually, and I think you're right. This is the canary in the coal mine or something. They are dealing with issues that other countries will be dealing with in the future. And I was reading an article from there. Admittedly, there was someone who's in the solar industry, but they basically said efficiency is dead. In Australia, at least in South Australia, where perhaps there are a lot of single family homes with swimming pools and lots of roof space, basically, and they're subsidizing the hell out of batteries. So people have solar, they have a battery, they can run their pool pump with the excess. Basically, it doesn't really matter about efficiency anymore. So just basically convince me that it's not the case.
Oh, I see. I see they're ready to convince, but perhaps let's take another comments first. Then you can think about it, but I'm sure you already thought about it. So.
Not really about improvement, but I wanted to go a little bit along with you about this distinction between electrification and energy efficiency, or the overlap between the two, and playing a little bit avocados diaboli there. where is this distinction relevant? And if we go along the sectors, we take the residential sector, we have the buildings, and now let's imagine we get all houses furnished with heat pumps that contribute a lot to flexibility. And if we assume these heat pumps are driven by renewables, then we get away from this problem of efficiency. So in a way, heat pumps deliver us one part of energy and take two parts somewhere for free from the ground. So we save 2/3 of our energy in the buildings, and then our job is done. So why go for insulation measures in buildings if we have this simple solution? So that's the residential sector. The second is the transport sector. We have electric vehicles, and if you look to the conversion chain, electric vehicles have a conversion efficiency of 75%. If you compare that with a thermal engine, that is 30%. And if you're there to go to something like synthetic fuel, then you have a conversion efficiency of 13%, so 5 times less. So going to electric cars, we save 80% of our energy. I'm making very primitive calculations just to make the point. I go to industry, that's a little bit more complex. We have the electric uses which are already there, and there our only choice is energy efficiency. I have to admit, I cannot find something different if I go, for example, to the 70% electricity consumption that to electric motors. There is no other way to reduce this energy consumption. And the other processes, there's a little bit of scope to go to electrifying, but we have a large number of processes like steel making. We go for hydrogen, and hydrogen, we have the losses in the conversion chain to hydrogen, where I only see increases, let's say. So I'm killing a bit my argument I started with, but let's put this to you and saying, oh, so why still think about insulation buildings? Why think about energy efficiency in the industrial sector and so on?
Okay, I think we will pose the questions here and give the panel a chance to respond. So who wants to start? Dimitar?
No, thanks a lot. No, thanks a lot for the questions. And I'm not saying it out of courtesy, but you're saying things that I am afraid to say sometimes. You're saying things that when we're talking about the new legislative framework, when we're talking about the risks with the current implementation of VPBD and these are real risks. These are real things that are currently legally allowed for member states to do and to achieve their targets. On paper, we have that. Now, of course, it was created with good intentions, but with these good intentions, then the devil was in the details. Now, if we decide to go down these routes, for example, what you described in Australia, that's why the Australians at the moment have peak reduction credits. That's why they have all these other systems, because they have to deal with that problem. And that comes directly to your question as well. If we decide to go down that path, yes, we will achieve the targets of the EPBD, but then everything will be much more expensive. The grids will be exploding until at least probably 2050. And in the end of the day, people's comfort and, of course, in that relation, agreeing with the energy transition will go out, will go away. This brings me back directly to this study that I referenced a few times that we did. It's on peak demand. And I have here some very good graphs. What will happen in this scenario? You cannot see much probably from here, but I will give you around a few of those. This was what's going to happen in such kind of scenarios. Here is the transmission grid at the moment and how it's going to be if you have a little bit more renovation. And this is what's going to happen if you have no renovation. And we go full on electrification, full on with all the other really good systems that they actually, I don't want to trash. That's why I'm afraid to speak about these topics, because they're good and I have them at home. We need to be careful. We need to be really careful. There will be this competition for the electricity and for the grid connection with the industry, as I mentioned. We're not going to live in comfortable homes because our systems will be trying to catch up. The compressors are going to be trying to catch up. The solar PVs will be also working quite a lot, and they will be accounting towards energy efficiency. It's going to be a bit weird. Of course, how to go around that? There are many good ways. There are many good ways, but we have to explore them. We have to think about them. You can think about seasonal PEFs or some other limits of how much can be accounted towards energy efficiency if you produce with a solar panel. But nevertheless, I want to still keep the message. We should not go down that road of full electrification without renovation, installation, and energy efficiency. but the best results are together. The best results, again, I'm going to show here, are when all of those systems work together, and it's lower than today. So I want to send that message around that things will be all right if we do them right. So,
Thanks
yes,
a lot. Any comments from Antonin? Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, agree with that as well. Of course, I mean, there's a part where we also forget to talk about, it's the speed. I mean, why did we have a 2020 target for both renewables and energy efficiency as well? It's because we wanted to electrify the system with green electricity, but we also wanted to reduce our overall energy demand so we can electrify that demand with green electricity as fast as possible as well. I mean, we know that there's been discussion right now on the 2040 climate targets. We also know that we still need to achieve the 2030 climate targets, and we need to get there in less than 5 years. So there's a part of speed. Maybe indeed we could just do that, but also, can we electrify fast enough? Can we provide green electricity fast enough? Can we provide the materials to create that green electricity fast enough? Then you have maybe also, of course, grid containment, but there's also limitation of the deployment of those technology in those supply infrastructure. So, I mean, working on both decarbonizing the supply and reducing the demand, it's how the framework was made, and it was made for a reason. And I still think we should continue that path. That's what we're calling, of course, for a 2040 energy target, because that's where you have a greener, but also a more effective and lower overall energy consumption for the same amount of services, which is what you want at the end of the day to make sure that you get to your climate target, but also, of course, energy security, energy affordability target faster. And we might see a situation where actually we're going to slow down in the transition just because we're going to forget about energy efficiency. And maybe in 5-10 years, people will say, why did we forget about energy efficiency? We shouldn't. Now we have much more energy demand that we would have. Look at all the prediction we made in 2020. We're much above than that. So I think there's also a part of, yes, this is a current discourse, but I think you might have a situation where we wake up in a couple of years and realizing how important energy efficiency was, and we didn't do enough to deliver on that when we could have. So that's one of my answers.
Thanks, Antonin. I'm also afraid that, we wouldn't be achieving our goals. I'm more afraid of that than, like a crazy electrification storm. Seni, would you like to comment on what was said by the other panelists?
On electrification, we just realized that everybody is speaking about it because also for the upcoming action plan. So I think it was your electric or somebody that did already a study how much you can electrify specifically the energy intensive industries, because they will matter a lot in terms of loads and connections and so on. So basically they can electrify not everything obviously, but they don't want to. But at the same time, they don't say it like that, which complicates also the data that is gathered or the process as you consider in the modeling, because you say, it's very difficult to electrify, not all the processes can be electrified and so on. And we think that this has to slow down. But electrification per se has been stagnating for quite some time right now, at least in Europe, which is unfortunate. So we want to amplify that, but nobody's following from the energy intensive industries particularly. It's very difficult and tough to achieve that level that we want to. So just being conscious also that energy efficiency will play a role in whenever the electrification does not flow, you need to come bypassing or on another door with another kind of principle or something to adjust it. So, yeah. Yeah, yes. Yes, yeah, definitely.
Jean-Sébastien, I think, has a comment / question.
I will play my coordinator card now. So sorry, no, because two things. I have one comment and one question to Nicolas. Yeah, sorry. So the comment that comes to you raised the point of system efficiency, and we are on it. So don't worry, that's something we definitely have in mind. But we have other projects on that. I still think we need projects on national energy efficiency as well and focus on energy efficiency, because we need to be strong on energy efficiency and proving the results to be taken seriously when we go to system efficiency. So I think both go together. But yeah, complementing what you mentioned, I don't have the graph. Wolfgang know that graph very well, the one I will mention. But in a previous project named NFirst, there was an assessment of scenarios factoring in the avoided cost of network when you, depending on the depth of the renovation. that you have. So that definitely is something we try to assess and we work on. And I also take advantage of that to make a kind of catch up of these 2 days, because that comes back to other topics that were covered during the other parts of these 2-day events. And on yesterday morning, that was the event of the In Excess project. And we had, for example, the Secretary General from GEOD, the Association of DSOs. So I can tell you they are looking for solutions on flexibility, etc. So they are also moving forward. Well, you might have a different view, but we have seen also pilots or different types of innovative energy efficiency services that were developed by some of the partners that were very interesting. So I also encourage you. I make some advertisement. I encourage you to have a look at that. In the afternoon yesterday, we had radio fairs that were also about energy efficiency first in regional energy planning, and that is definitely about system efficiency as well, and thinking things all together. So behind that, I see the need to connect the different community of experts, of professionals, etc. Because it is true, where I totally join you, is that we tend, on our side, the energy efficiency community, we tend to be a bit in our bubble. We have our barriers, our issues, and we like to work on that and to progress to make our models. And I think the energy, let's take the energy efficiency first principle as a driver for that, as a driver to connect the different communities, the ones working on networks, on flexibility, on energy efficiency, all together. Well, I stopped too much, so I stop. And now I go to the question. So Sam had this comment about how to value energy savings differently. And there has been a lot of debate for the next period of the white certificates about maybe including a part of carbon component into the white certificates. So in there, we have Nicolas Fondras from ATA who can comment on that. So I'm happy to give him the word.
Well, it's been a tricky issue in France. We started with a very simple scheme. And then, of course, we had to include energy poverty into the scheme. That was a big change. And of course, there's been pressure to have, I would say, a decarbonization component. The government started with the obligation a few years ago by, I would say, reinforcing the obligation on fuel supplier of carbon-based products. That was the first push. The second push was to get rid of the, I would say, of the measures that were fuel-based, like in Europe. So that was the second push. The third push, which happened well a few months ago, was a recalculation of our spreadsheets based on final energy. Before, the electrical devices were on primary energy. So it was a big boost for decarbonization. And now we have a final, I would say, measure, which is we are starting a new period of obligation. We have a catalog of around 200, I would say, standard operations that can be subsidized. But most of the energy savings or of what is being used in the catalog is related to the housing sector. So, of course, what is happening is that we are achieving in France good results in the housing sector, but the transportation sector, it's not been so efficient. In fact, energy consumption in the transportation sector has slightly increased. So we need to rebalance, and the obligation is more and more on the transportation sector, but the transportation sector is not benefiting from the scheme. So of course the government would like to, I would say, find a way to rebalance that. So the solution, and it should work, has been to create new, I would say, new spreadsheets to encourage a switch to, I would say, electric vehicles. Well, the new, there are two main schemes. One which This is what we call a program, and my colleague Solem already described that it's a scheme, a leasing scheme for, I would say, low-income section of the public, so that they can purchase on a lease electric vehicles. And of course, for the general public, there are the standards operation spreadsheets that give an advantage, which means that now the scheme has to connect with all the car dealers, because before they got their, I would say, their subsidies directly from the government budget. Now they get it out of the obligation scheme. So they have to understand the obligation scheme. They have to understand how they can include that into their price. What will be the strategy of the car suppliers, of the car dealers, you know. So the whole system is being, they know that a lot of money will be invested into that scheme. It has to go through the obligation scheme, and it's a market-based scheme. So the car producers, the car dealers, the general public have to find, I would say, the best strategy to access to those, I would say, those measures. But most people consider that the energy saving potential in the next 4 or 5 years will be, well, we hopefully think that will be, because the obligations has been increased, and the increase of the obligation will be based on the transportation sector. That's all I can say, but it's quite interesting to observe from our viewpoint, which is only to produce those calculation spreadsheets. The people will use them.
I think it's really interesting because you're showing, so this is a very successful energy efficiency scheme. The white certificate scheme in France is one of the biggest energy efficiency policy in Europe in terms of energy savings. And you can see that there is like this pressure, but also like the scheme is being directed to fulfill the different objectives over time. So energy poverty, now carbon savings, moving more into the transport sector. So it's really interesting to see our energy efficiency policy is already evolving to fulfill the objectives of, you know, of the tomorrow, the objective we are facing today more urgently. So I think, you know, it's things are happening definitely, and more things would be happening. I also like refer to Australia as, you know, like we had Sam and I had a discussion about it and how fascinating it is to think about these batteries, that everyone has a battery, and, you know, it really changes the game. Now, I mean, we have to conclude because there are some very fresh beers, I understand, waiting for us. And I would like to, you know, give the floor to our panel, just, you know, one more sentence. What do you think we could do as a community to work together better? Sorry, it's a hard question.
To work together better. I mean, I don't want to add another platform or anything like that, but that's always what I'm missing is regular group between stakeholders, implementers, to have a check or what is working, what is not working, what can we change in the legislation. Because often, I mean, as Marion said, I worked on the revision of the EED a lot, and I was really involved in the amendments, the MEP saying, oh no, Article 8 should be calculated like that, it should be implemented like that, but we didn't really have connection with implementers on the ground, and we didn't really know what to say. We, of course, in our mind, we've had, that would be great to have, but then the feasibility of it or the difficulties on the ground, we had very little grasp of. And I think us, especially at EU level, we're missing that part because we always have this great ideas of how it should be done. But then in reality, we know that we face a lot of problems also in the implementation phase. So not necessarily something that is handled by European Commission, or potentially, but something that would give us, the stakeholders, or even maybe even the MEP somehow, an understanding of, this is great on paper at EU level, but can it be implemented, and how, and what are the problems with that? I think that would be super interesting, but it's yet another platform.
Implementation dialogue, maybe.
Something like that.
So one thing that we could do better, I mean, I kind of think I already mentioned that it was for our sector to start speaking more with the non-convinced audiences. That's the thing that, I mean, I came to the energy efficiency world about a year and a half ago, and it's a very, very bright community with a lot of experts that have expertise in other spheres. We combine them in the studies, we combine them in our projects, but I don't see that other sectors are seeing that. I don't think they're recognizing that. When you speak with the commission and tell them, guys, what about the grid operators? Like, we have to work a little bit more with them. And already the legislation talks about the energy efficiency first principle, that they have to think about energy savings first, flexibility before capex. And they just say, well, it says where feasible. For them, it's not feasible. We're talking about other sectors that are a bit more old school, for which it's just about supply and cables and transformers. We will have to invest a lot in that, don't get me wrong. That is the path forward. But they do not think energy savings and energy efficiency is much of a factor. And not at least enough. So that's my message that I would like to send to everyone. Let's speak to the other sectors, try to convince them, try to think about mechanisms with which we can collaborate with them, whether monetarily or non-monetarily, that doesn't matter. But we should not be doing this in silos.
Thanks, and Sen, you have the last word.
Any pressure on me, but maybe it comes from a traumatic experience that I had last year when talking to system operator, which is quite amazing because I came from that world into the flexibility. And to be honest, I'm not a very talkative person overall, so I like to observe more. So I would say I like a little bit a more expensive choice, but maybe with bring a little bit more conclusion or kind of to have field visits, to go really and check what's going on. Because we talk a lot, particularly in Brussels, being a head of policy, you see a lot coming, you build your experience. Of course, you talk with the people, my colleagues here, because we observe the same things, but sometimes I have difficulties to find tangible things. And it's different when you see it like best practices from this country. Okay, you can grasp a little bit what's going on, but you don't understand the logic behind. So I'd like to go sometime, have it or shadow somebody and implement it for 1 week so you can see how they think, what's the struggle, of course, it's not easy. It's expensive, I would say, because you need to prepare those things, but that could help a lot.
Thanks a lot for these very good ideas. So Jean-Sébastien, what do you think?
Well, I think we still have a lot of work to do, but that's usual. You know, when we finish a project, the only thing we do is say, we need a next one. But yeah, we probably need the next one for sure, but a different one. That's what I hear from what you say. That's also what we feel from the discussion we had, from what was presented today. So obviously, if we had to do the project differently, if we go back on that, maybe not, because I think that the way we did was relevant following the adoption of the new ED. But if we plan a new project, we will probably do it differently in terms of topic, in terms of which stakeholders we need to exchange with, etc. So I think, yeah, there are definitely very promising things to do. And I agree with Antonin, we are not there. Of course, the results from 2023, okay, that's the way to show that it is feasible, but I think nobody believes that we will keep this pace, unfortunately, in the next years. So we could be a bit pessimistic on the one hand. But on the other hand, I would say during these 2 days, we have seen a lot of pilot cases, case studies, examples, feedback from the field, feedback from national policies, all levels, local level, regional level, national levels. So it's moving. So definitely it's moving. It needs to scale up. But I'm quite sure that if we would be, there might be a monitoring issue overall, because if we would be able to capture all the results from all what is happening right now, we would probably be surprised about the impact they produce, and maybe we would be more optimistic about the next year. So I will keep that with me, and I hope to convey this optimistic message. But I still keep you for 1 minute before you get your beer. Because if all these 2 days went very fine, very well, very smoothly, we owe that to a great team. And I want you to give a very round, warm of applause to Roberta, who is the maestra behind that. And Also, you have Anouche and Marie over there. You have Amarilis here. So without this team, we would have been not able to focus on the discussion, and that was so great that we had nothing to do apart from discussing, sharing our thoughts, sharing our experience. So thanks again a lot. The project is not back to ENSMOV Plus. We are still 1 month to go until a bit more until the end of November. So please stay in touch because we will publish more contents. So there are still some input to go. And also, if you are interested in the French White Certificate Scheme, there is one place to go, one event to attend. It's in French. Journée technique C2E, so the technical days of the French White Certificate Scheme. That's at the end of November in Paris. But if you want to meet something like 400, 500 stakeholders involved in the scheme, that's really the place to be. And of course, I will not leave you without thanking dear moderator Marion, who made a great job for this panel, and 3 panelists. Thanks a lot for joining and to make the connections with the communities we need to reach out there. So thank you, everyone, and let's continue the discussion over a drink. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the ground floor, right? But maybe Roberta, you.
Yeah, I thank you again, everyone, also for the team, for the comms team who is not here, Axel, Elpida, because Mary who is here. So it was a big work. But I want to tell you that indeed the beers and the wine and the food is on the ground floor, and also that the photo, the video, the presentation, the recording will be available in the next month, most probably before October, because a lot of these projects are finishing. So thank you again for coming, and thank you again for this event.